Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our weekly live stream, our weekly Monday Night Live. We're here every Monday at 7 p.m., sometimes maybe 7:15, 6:30. Depends what's going on in the sports world. That's something that Frank pays attention to. He likes to watch these these guys run around, beat the crap out of each other. So we try to pay attention to that. But usually every Monday we are live. How's it going, Frank?
Good. Hope everybody's doing good on this Martin Luther King Day. I'm good, man. I'm good. Yep, there's a big game later on today, a little bit later on. So go Notre Dame, I guess. But today we have a guest. We have a family friend too, I guess. Well, our families were friends. We kind of met on YouTube. James Buccellato, Dr. James, criminologist, and we're gonna talk this shit a little bit. We're gonna talk about some of the old stuff, some new stuff, and some things that we have in common, like the Castellammarese and the faction of the American mob, and not so much across the pond. That could be very dangerous, especially for people like him that still go back. But we'll try to hit a couple of good spots too. We're going to talk about some not so current but almost current stuff. So let's go.
Right, we'll talk about James for a minute before he comes in. James Fiordilino, he's a Ph.D. He's been at the faculty member of the Department of Criminology at Crime Justice at Northern Arizona University. Currently, I believe he's at the Irvin D. Reed Honors College at Wayne State University in Detroit, where he's been for many years. He's a crime writer and social scientist. He's appeared in media outlets such as the History Channel, Travel Channel, Viceland, CBS News, and numerous other outlets and publications in reference to organized crime and gang culture. He's also the man behind the book Early Organized Crime in Detroit, Vice, Corruption, and the Rise of the Mafia. One-time co-host over here at the Original Gangsters podcast. And we're going to talk about that as well. Let's welcome Dr. James Buccellato. If I missed anything, please let me know, James, and I'd love to hear more about your career and what you're up to.
Yeah, nice seeing you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.
Good evening to everyone out there. It's really cold here in Detroit. I suspect where you guys are, it's very cold as well.
Yeah, I'm in New York City. Yeah, it is pretty cold. It's going to get worse from what I hear.
I'm somewhere outside the program. But anyhow, yeah, man, welcome, bro. I haven't talked to you today, obviously, but I haven't heard from you in a minute. You were with Bernstein on that show. What happened? I mean, I haven't seen you in a while. A lot of people are asking. These guys are a good team together. The original
thank you
podcast. I know you're busy with school and stuff, so let's hear.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I was part of the podcast for about 5 years, and I was proud of the content we were putting out. But I stepped away at one point for a while, and then I came back briefly for a few months and appeared kind of irregularly, on a few episodes here and there. And then I stepped away completely, just resigned. And it was for a few reasons. The first reason was just was very time consuming, as you guys know now, doing this, and that it's very time consuming putting out a podcast content every week, having to come up with topics, and then you have to promote it on social media. And so it was very time consuming. It was taking away time from my academic research and teaching. But I'll be candid with people. I still consider Scott a friend. I talked to him. I texted with him earlier today about some other things. We talk about sports and just kind of other things because we're friends. But there were some creative differences behind the scene. I'm not going to lie about that. Earlier on in the podcast, I was very much wanted the show to be about historical analysis, like looking at historical case studies and sort of macro case studies, like that you guys were talking with Tom last week about sort of global organized crime, and then doing interviews. We had a lot of great interviews. We had Frank on a few times. We had Michael Francis on quite a few times, interviewing authors, journalists, and that's the kind of content that I wanted to do. And I also was adamant that we not be a show that was just about the Italian mafia. So I was the one that pushed the episodes for drug cartel episodes, Russian mafia, Irish, outlaw bikers, black organized crime, etc. I wanted to have a real kind of variety of interviewing experts on those specific areas. And there just seemed to be this gravitational pull toward episodes that kinds of things that you would see in Gangster Report, which is Scott's, online magazine. And that's just not what I'm interested in. I can't speak to what Scott does, but I'm not interested in talking about contemporary guys in Cosa Nostra and allegedly what their status is and what they're doing and what's the politics of it. I'm not interested in that. And increasingly, those are the kinds of episodes that they wanted to do. And so it just, between me being, having too many other obligations and that wasn't really my vision for the show. We all decided collectively that it was best that I move on, and they do their thing now, and I wish them well, but it's just not really what I'm interested in anymore.
No, it makes sense for sure. A lot of people don't want to get into that active stuff, but people do enjoy the history stuff, and I find you to be more into that history things. Well, let's say hi to some people, right, that are out there.
Sure. Sure.
Alan
Scott
Torres,
H, what's going on? Farmer. Matt, what's going on, buddy? Steve, Corruption Connection, what's going on? Everybody go subscribe to Tony over there at Corruption Connection. George Singh, what's going on? David LaFleur, Joey Frakes. Roro texted me. She said she'll be in a few minutes. David Price, Half Day the Jackal. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it is pretty time consuming, James, when you're trying to have, because I run this channel with Frank now. I have NYC Crime Spot, which is another YouTube channel. And then like you, I work also. So it definitely does. You really have to pay attention to what you want to talk about, what you have to cover, how to make the best of your time. But me and Frank, we're trying to mix it up, talk about cultural stuff, like years, different neighborhoods, as well as organized crime and Frank's stories too.
Yeah, I love your guys' show. I've been texting with Frank, that I've watched almost all of them, and
thank you.
They're really entertaining and informative, and I really enjoy it. Happy for you guys.
Well, I'm trying. James is part of the Buccellato clan in my town in Castellamare Golfo, and that was one of the first clans involved in organized crime. They differ from the other clan that they fought for a very long time with, which was the Baventry clan. And the Baventries, if some of you have probably heard the name, Caesar Baventry is probably the most popular out of the name, but there's so many. There's the actual founding father in back home, and one here was Vito Baventry, who dies in 1930. He gets killed prior to the Castellamarese War. And everybody's always saying Maranzano. It was really Vito Baventry who was the pioneer, in my opinion, of the Bananno family. And in case you people don't know, Joe Bananno's mother is a Baventry. But before they were the Baventries, their nemesis were the Buccellatos, and they've been fighting forever. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's something that I cover in my book, that the prominent clans in Sicily at the time, Castellamare del Golfo in the late 1800s, early 1900s, were like the Buccellatos and Bonventres, Magadinos. And what happened was there was a lot of intermarriage between the Bonannos, Bonventres, and Magadinos, and that they ended up having enough muscle to challenge the Buccellatos. And it was a really violent conflict. And a lot of family members on both sides were killed. And then the war starts in Castellamare, but it carries over to the United States because the different families are migrating here. So there was really a three-front war going on. You can read about it in my book in Castellamare, Brooklyn, and Detroit. And they were still fighting. And even my great-grandfather was one of the people killed in the conflict, killed by the Magadino Bonventre guys. And my family killed some of their guys. So it was pretty violent. And then Mussolini comes into power, and pretty much everyone has to
chill out. You gotta chill out,
whether they like it or not, right? Chill out.
And they all move out, and they all move into the States and start killing each other for it. Still.
So and then post World War II, it's different. The clans kind of as Frank and I have talked about privately, Mattarella, a big powerful
That's
politician.
after the war,
That's after the war,
1940.
right? He kind of brings the factions together, so the killing those vendettas and things like that are a thing of the past at that
And
point.
we'll explain who Mattarella is. Danny F asks a good
Yeah,
question. Is
I'm gonna
Jack
bring that up.
Benventry, is Jack Benventry part of that the Benventry clique? Absolutely, he is, and so is
Yeah.
his dad.
And he's cousins with some of my cousins, but
Well,
we don't have to get into the
yes, we could get into that too.
right.
And his dad is my uncle's godfather. It's 6 degrees of separation, Castellamare style.
Right. It's a lot of genealogy. James, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is something you kind of had to work out on your own, right? As far as finding out, I believe I heard you speak about that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard things, innuendo and things like that when I was growing up, but I mean, as you guys know, people aren't usually candid about these things, and if you ask questions, it's like, well, you shouldn't really, like, we're not really going to talk about that. So I would pick up on innuendo and things like that. I knew my great grandfather was killed, and you know, in my family, the narrative was that well, it was the Buccellatos weren't mafia. The Magadinos were the mafia. We were just the good guys minding our own business, and the
Right.
Magadinos were the bad. And then when you talk to Magadinos, right, they heard the same thing. They heard, oh, the Buccellatos were the mafia guys. We were just good guys minding our own business. But I didn't hear much, and so you're right. I had to do. I just had fragments of information, and so I started looking at the literature, you know, but the Bananno biographies, and then started doing archival research. I've been to Sicily a few times, interviewed family members, but when you interview family members, I interview them about genealogical stuff because the crime stuff it opens up some wounds, and so I'm always tactful and, you know, diplomatic. But I was able to combine the genealogical information and then look at the archival research and start to put together a narrative of what happened.
Absolutely. I mean, now we're talking about Mattarella. Who's Mattarella? So Mattarella is a politician from my town, Bernardo Mattarella at that time. His wife is a Buccellato, but it gets more deeper than that. So before Mattarella in the 50s, right, he goes to bed with the CIA. He tells them that he's not gonna, you know, he's gonna help them fucking keep the communists out of Sicily. And he's got a free pass to do whatever he wants. So he goes to bed with the mobsters, the one from his town. He goes to bed with Joe Bananno, who's already 20 years made a name of himself. So this is Joe Bananno in 1931 becomes Joe Bananno, head of the Bananno family. But in the 50s he goes back. So he's been established almost 20 years. He's got a name. They make peace. But in his book, he lies about a certain little bit of a tidbit. We went through this. He says that the beef between the Buccellatos and the Benventries was squashed in 1908 when he was born. And for his baptism, he says that his dad brought him to the Buccellato house and told one of the Buccellatos, I believe it was Felicia Buccellato, here, like here's my son, baptize him so we could end this beef. Didn't happen.
The dove of peace. He was
the olive branch. This fucking idiot. Yeah. And I call him an idiot, but he was actually a very sharp guy. You know, but back to that, we go back to Mattarella. Mattarella makes the peace. He's an influential politician, has a lot of what do you call that, pull for the time. And after that, he has 2 sons. One's Pierasante, who becomes also a politician, and another one, Sergio, who's a little bit younger. Sergio becomes president of Italy, but they kill his brother back in the 80s during that whole war because he wasn't playing like his dad used to. He wasn't playing fair with the mobsters, and they killed him. So his brother turned into the United States version of Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah,
and he went from like, well, your dad used to be this guy, but now you're going after the mob. And he's president of Italy.
Yeah, he's the president now, but right, his brother was kind of an anti-mafia crusader. And we know from the research that when the guys in Palermo wanted to kill him, they went to some of the guys in Castellamare and said, you know, is this going to be a problem if we remove him? And the guys in Castellamare said basically, we're all disappointed in Persante. And you know how you read between the lines of what.
Well, yeah, I mean, his dad was funding people to kill the communists at that time when there was a scare, and he was going to communist meetings in the 80s, you know, just to be friends with everybody.
Yeah, that didn't go over well, and yeah, but his father, right, was a prominent member of parliament, and Bernardo Mattarella, and so
the whole 9 yards.
yeah, and there's an interesting story that when you talk about Joe Bananno, when Joe Bananno visited Sicily in the 1950s, Mattarella literally arranged like a red carpet it was like the hometown son returns home, and we're going to make a big deal of this. And the State Department was outraged at Mattarella. The U.S. State Department was really upset with him that, you know, they viewed Joe Bananno as an American gangster. Like, what are you like, you know, giving him this homecoming parade for? And so that was a bit of a political fiasco that Mattarella had to work himself out of.
Like,
the United
Middle
States.
Eastern terrorism today is probably public enemy number one as we speak. Or back then it was the scare of communism, and they were going to bed with all these wise guys and mobsters and politicians to keep that, you know, because they wanted to keep the communists out of the Western Europe, and Italy was going down pretty fast.
Yeah, the Mattarella was using guys like Giuliano to take out the communists.
Right, and then threw him under the bus as well. Salvatore Giuliano.
Right. So Mattarella was very well connected to the U.S. to the United States, but also to you know, Mafia guys in Castellamare. But yeah, the two sons are very popular in our family's hometown. Even today, I mean, they're obviously very, you know, proud that Sergio Mattarella, who's, you know, president of Italy, and his political enemies actually use this against him. I don't know if you know that, but when they're politicking against him, they'll say, you know, he's a Buccellato, so you know, keep your eye on him.
yeah, he comes from just out of golfer. You know?
That's right. But it doesn't stick, because by all indications, he's a, you know, he's a legit guy. He doesn't have any ties with, you know, whatever his father did. That he's not part of that world.
I get it. So let's go a little bit further. Let's go to the 60s in New York and the Bananno family. What's that looking like?
Yeah, I mean, you're really it's still primarily a Castellamarese family, the Bananno crime family. Most of the high-ranking guys are from Castellamare, and but it's they're also, I would say, at this point, becoming heavily involved in international drug trafficking. That family in particular, guys like you know, we had Galante setting that stuff earlier. I mean, they had the big meeting in '57. That's what Bananno was there for. He leaves that out of his book too, that he was meeting with Luciano.
Out of his book.
Right. Yeah. So they're heavily involved in international narcotics trafficking, but it's really the calm before the storm, because as we know, we're on the cusp of, by the 60s, the so-called banana split, where there's a rift within the Castellamarese people, and Joe Bananno is feuding with his cousin Stefano Magaddino, and Gaspar Di Gregorio gets dragged into this, and so by the 60s, you know, eventually there's a shooting war, a civil war within the Bananno family.
Right. And do you think if so the loyalist there is Carmine Galante? Everybody knows Carmine Galante. Carmine Galante is one of the most prolific killers in Cosa Nostra history. We talk about him a lot, and he goes away in '64, and he's very loyal to Joe Bananno. Do they make a move on Joe Bananno? Does that war go on if Carmine Galante's out?
I think if Galante's on the street, that would have definitely changed things, because he was the pit bull, Joe Bananno's pit bull, and I tend to think that they viewed Joe as being much more vulnerable when with Galante off the streets. Yeah, I would say that they rethink that.
I feel the same way, and even with Di Gregorio's guys, which were lined up in Magadino, up in Buffalo, and most of them were a lot of them were part of my family and their guys. You know, we had my Uncle John, my godfather Joe Pizzo. We had the Licata, the Vito Licata, that was part of that clan. So there was a lot of guys there that probably wouldn't. I don't think they would have made that move if Galante was around. And even when Galante came out of prison, you didn't see those guys that much around anymore. They were fading out. And there was a newer generation, the ones that people say that Galante went to Italy and, what do you say, recruited them? He didn't recruit them. They were here already. Let's get that shit straight.
Yeah, that's part of the mythology too. That he was going to. Now he was going to He had visited Castellamare. He was there in '57, but the idea that he was going around the town with like like a recruiter, like
yeah, before Sicilian zips would come over at Castellamare, they'll go for it and send him over. First of all, he was in jail from '64 to '74. The guys you guys are talking about that he was recruiting. The ones that eventually killed him, and that little close-knit community there, they started coming here around 68, 69. How did he do this? By phone? From jail?
Right.
You know,
I think some of that mythology comes from Roncesvalles' testimonials, where he talked about that, Galante was recruiting, hitters. And he even said in his, one of his where he was testifying before Congress, something that's always been very intriguing to me. I've tried to unpack what he was really trying to say, but he said that the Buccellato family, that they were sending these hitters to New York to help the Galante Bananno faction, and I just wonder where he got that from and why he was why he would say that.
Why would he say a lie? I call him the Sicilian Iceman.
Yeah.
Because he may, I don't know. You know, he also says that Pino de Guana was this big up and comer in Knickerbocker Avenue. Frank Bonomo missed his face by this much with a razor. He was respected up to the point. I told you his story. His story was, when you had a lot of moral convictions in the mob and you did a little something wrong and people got the wind of it, he left his wife for his wife's cousin in Italy. And he was blackballed for doing something like that. He left 4 kids in Italy, and he was nicknamed Joe the Shithead, Pinuzzo Strunzo, and that was his name. So this guy Luigi, he liked to hold court with people that were lesser than him. So he had a couple of people there. He would hold court in Knickerbocker Avenue, pizza place, and at one time he had a chance of being somebody. He was one of the first guys to own a car in my town. He drove my family to my brother's baptism when he had a big, huge car, he was at the party, whatever. He had potential, but that all went down when he left his wife. Those things back then meant a lot, If you could leave your wife, you could leave your friends. That was the whole concept. So here's Luigi Run Val telling these feds that I'm talking to Joe De Iguana, and he's a real guy, and they were blowing smoke up his ass,
Yeah, he identified De Guano as one of the so-called Buccellato, hitmen. They use the term hit. That's literally the term they used in the congressional testimony. Actually, it wasn't congressional. It was the presidential. I think it was the presidential commission, on organized crime, whatever. But and one thing that Frank, you and I have talked about is like if you look at the politics of it, like, the Buccellatos are doing their thing in Castellamare. Why would they want to get involved in a civil war in Brooklyn, in New York? Like, why would they pick sides? Like, what's like? It just sort of, it doesn't really make sense, like, politically.
Right?
Why would they get involved in something like that?
No, you're right. You're right. Especially if they have their own thing back home. You had Nino Buccellato, who comes. He gets killed in 1980. 81. He was aligned with the Alcamo family. Everybody always thinks that Castellamare is the main family out in Sicily because of the influence here in New York, but it's actually Alcamo is where everything's going on.
Yeah, Alcamo is next door to Castellamare. It's a bigger town. If you have people that ever go, it's a bigger town, more action.
David Price wants to know, given the historical feud between the Bananno Buccellato families in Castellamare del Golfo, how did Joe Buccellato become a member of the Bananno family in Brooklyn?
Well, he came a little bit after that when everything kind of got settled down. Like James said, for example, the Buccellatos and Movetris actually intermarried by then in the 50s.
That's right. Yeah.
And so that was after. But let's go at it again. It wasn't a Bananno Buccellato feud. It was a Baventry Buccellato feud.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean Joe Bananno, I know it gets confusing, but Joe Bananno was always very proud of the fact that Luigi Buccellato was his baptismal godfather. And when I was researching my book, I went to Tucson and met with the Bananno family down there, and they were telling me about, what did Joe think about the Buccellatos, and they always said that that he never had a problem with the Buccellatos, that he would even say it was the Magadinos and Bonventres that had the problem with them, not me. I mean, his dad and uncle got dragged into it, but in terms of Joe Bananno specifically, yeah, he stayed out of it. He was too young to get involved in that. So with that question, by the time we're getting to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that blood feud stuff is over. They're at that point, they're just Castellamares guys.
And everybody in my town had one or the other to go to. Like my father's side identified more with the Buccellato side because they themselves were rural and sheep herders and cattle people, and so were the Buccellatos, where the Baventries were more diplomatic and on the water, my mother's side of the family. So it was at that point, by the 50s, that feud kind of settled down. Settled down. That's the way I perceived it anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they were different. I would still say back in Sicily, they were still different factions, but it wasn't a vendetta blood feud. They worked together. They intermarried, but even after the war, and I think one of the reasons why the Buccellatos intermarried with the Remy clans and the Minori clans was to sort of because the Bonventres had done the same thing with intermarried with the Magadinos and the Diego Playa. Yeah, that family. So
yeah. They were just, what they were doing was they were arming themselves.
Yeah.
These guys, we got this, but by the 50s, I think pretty much that was squashed.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. But the 60s was there's other things that surfaced down. I don't know how true it is. There's government papers that Bill Bananno had cooperated with the government. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I know you guys have addressed that on your show before. So it's complicated. I mean, we know that when his father was supposedly kidnapped, which he wasn't, that was a sham, so he didn't have to go to court. But I'm not sure that Bill knew that in real time though. And Bill sat down with the FBI to talk about the so-called kidnapping. That's true. Which in that world you're not even supposed to do that, right? So I understand the idea. What he's talking out of school. Now, was he an actual CI? That's not 100% proven, but we know that that there was a high-ranking member of the Banannos at that time period who was a CI. And when you look at what this person was telling the feds, a lot of people suspect, based on the information, that in all likelihood it was Bill Bananno, even if we don't know 100%.
Right.
Most researchers think it was in all likelihood him.
I don't want to label anybody. Don't surprise me. Danny F asked, Pizza Connection, Joseph Ganji had a daughter about your age. Did you know her? Yeah. Her name is Mary Jo. I knew her. Yes.
A couple other questions here. John Sedlitsky, what's going on, John? How are you? He says, amongst the guys on the street, would you say they are predominantly Neapolitan or Sicilian?
Now?
Yeah, I don't know if you mean now or back then. I don't know what he means.
Well, back then, I think it was like 75-25. I think today is more like, even if they're Sicilian, they're American. So I would probably say probably 75-25 Neapolitan and American over 20. Not even 25 is a lot Sicilian. And when I mean Sicilians being born there, even less. Probably like shit. I don't know, maybe 90-10.
Ducks, what's up, man? He says there's a Bananno family induction list from around 1990, and he says Frank's Uncle John and Giuseppe Buccellato are listed on it. That would be what, in attendance for a ceremony, I guess?
Yeah, that's the list that was found at John Jr.'s house, by the way.
Oh,
right, yeah. Because they were both already big shots at that point.
Yeah, that would have been like they attended, I guess, or
yeah.
Yeah, that was that list. There's my Uncle John. But Vito Grimaldi was on that list too, I remember, and so is that I remember being on it. A lot of people, but also my godfather, Joe Pizzo.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that makes sense. I'm familiar with that.
Thank you for your super chat, Timothy O'Reilly. Much appreciated. Is Costa Nostra
Thank
strong in Northern Italy?
You, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, Ro, let me say hi to some people. I'm sorry. Joe Root, Joey Franks, Drum Capella, I seen you there. Drum Capella, if you're listening, I friended you on Facebook, so check it out. D'Augusta, how are you?
Thank you for your question, Timothy. If you guys want to answer, is Costa Nostra strong in Northern Italy? What's it like going on nowadays?
I think the Calabrese are bigger in Northern Italy these days.
Yeah, and I'm going to give credit to Tom on that one. He was saying that the Calabrese has a lot of influence. Hey, Mo, how are you, Mo? They have a lot of influence in Northern Italy, which I always had an idea in Milan, especially in Milano. Congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles and Mo. Sorry about the Lions. I know you're a Cowboy fan.
Yeah. My team was done a long time ago, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but I think I have some Italian investigative files from the 60s and 70s that show that some of the guys from Castellammare and Alcamo had investments all over the country, not just southern Italy, but even in the north. Guys like Nino Buccellato, Gaspar Magadino, but that's decades ago. I think right now, today, I think the Calabrese are. I mean, and it's not even just northern Italy. I mean, they control all of Europe. I think pretty much, or at least all of Western Europe.
Yeah, they look like a really close knit group. That's what I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. It is what it is. What is this? Was Rizzuto from the Canada connection to the Banannos from Galante spending time in Montreal, or did he make a connection with Vic Catroni? Maybe you could answer that one.
It was Catroni when Galante. So people probably your audience probably knows this, but Galante was the one who planted the flag in Montreal for the Banannos, because there was already a mafia organization in Montreal, the Catroni group, and Galante made the deal with them. Well, it wasn't so much a deal; it was sort of the Godfather thing. Like you could make you an offer, you can't refuse. The Catronis really didn't have much of a choice, and then the Banannos got a piece of all their action there. But that was with Catroni, not the Rizzutos.
Gotcha. See, when it comes to Canada, there's almost nothing I know about it, except that the capital is Ottawa.
Pedge has a question. He's talking about, I guess, a war you mentioned about a while ago. I don't know. Maybe Frank, you remember this one, or
that's a Licata. I think he's talking about the Licata that came a little bit after that.
The Licata hit. The Licata hit at the Licata Cafe hit. Is that what?
Yeah. No, that was a little. That was a lot after actually.
That was 82.
The 60s and 70s. Yeah, but that was we touched on that. We're gonna touch on that a little bit more after. With the death of the two Licatas. Their brother, if you remember, Petch, he died in Knickerbocker, and we were small, but his name was Vito Licata. He got killed in a pool.
Oh, that was the pool hall one. Yeah. We
talked about that one back in the day, and he was a loyalist to De Gregorio, and he was my Uncle John's gumbare, which means like a best man, but he baptized his daughter, actually, not his son.
Hedge 499. Thank you, buddy. Really appreciate
Thank
that,
you,
guys.
Pedge. I appreciate it. We had Pedge on the other day. Good guest. Good guest.
Yeah, bring in your questions, guys, and then we'll hopefully be able to answer them. I just want to ask you, Dr. James, a couple of questions actually about your career, if you don't mind. I find
Sure.
I'm very interested by what you do. So you're a professor, you're a criminologist, that's correct?
Yes.
So essentially, and so what are you teaching? What is like one of your classes? What is that like?
This semester, I'm teaching a course on gangs and organized crime, and then I also teach crime and film.
Crime and film.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. So with crime and film, we each lesson plan is on a different criminological theory, but we use film to illustrate the theory. So I use it. The way I refer to it is if I just teach a pure criminological theory course, the students are going to fall asleep. Even though I love theory, I love criminological theory.
Right.
But so it's a way to sort of trick the students into finding it interesting if you can link it to using a film to illustrate the theory.
Okay.
And then the gangs and organized crime class, we each lesson plan is on a different one lesson plan. This week it's outlaw bikers, then prison gangs. There's a lesson plan on Irish organized crime, Italian organized crime, Latin American drug cartels, and so forth, street gangs.
Is that the hardest to cover, by the way, the Latin American cartels? More intricate, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's they're always killing each other, so it's difficult to keep track of what's
it's
what.
one of the ones that I find really hard to keep track of, like what's going on, like the history, even like a lot of it.
Yeah, and it's more we use the term cartel, but it's more of like a network more so than an organization. So with like the Italians, it's an organization, it's hierarchical. The cartels, it's more of a decentralized network kind of thing, so that becomes complicated too. You have the big shots at the top, like El Chapo and his family, but then they're dealing with actually smaller crime families throughout the geography, and then below them are street gangs, and so it's pretty challenging to keep it straight.
Right. Cool. No, it's interesting. So as far as like a movie, can you give us an example of like what movie you would play?
Well, so for the New York guys here, so we have a lesson plan on social disorganization theory, and we use Taxi Driver, the film Taxi Driver, as
my favorite movie, actually.
So. Yeah,
I don't know what that says about me. It's my favorite movie.
I love it too.
By the way, I came out with the hypothesis that Travis gets whacked. I don't know if you've ever thought about that.
And what do you mean? Like in
like that's his future.
After
the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Zoom
because
in. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, at the end, because at the end, if you notice, there's an article at the end where there's like his articles of him being a hero or whatever, and they identify the guy he kills as like a capo in an Italian organized crime. One of the guys that was in the strip club. I think the guy in like the plaid suit or whatever, that really tacky looking dude. So they say he's a capo out of Brooklyn. So I was like, oh, so they probably in 1976, 77 New York City, they'd probably find this guy who went back to being a cab driver and blow his head off at some point.
Yeah, I like that theory. I mean, I've always been intrigued by the theory that he actually dies in the seedy apartment complex, and that the other stuff is sort of he's fantasizing that as he's dying. He's fantasizing that he's going to be viewed as a hero, and that he can kind of give Betsy the I don't need you anymore, and but that he really dies in that in that
that's cool. I like that too.
So and then we know that at some point they were considering a sequel. So now that's not canon because they never actually made the sequel, but the fact that they were considering a sequel suggests that at least in Scorsese's mind, he lives, and Travis lives. Yeah. So I don't know. Right now I think all of these are plausible theories, but I like your theory as well.
Yeah, I figured they would have caught up to him at some point, if in fact he went back to just
being a son of taxi cab driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
But yeah, no, definitely a movie I love, and I always find little things that I didn't realize before in it when I watch it.
Oh yeah, it's a film you have to watch several times, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's pretty extreme, and I just love it, and yeah, so that would be one. Mystic River is another
I
film that I
love that
assigned.
movie. Ron
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lee,
that's a good
one of
one.
my
That's
favorite
a
authors.
yeah. That's a
And
messed up one. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, it fucked
yeah,
me up a lot. I felt
Yeah.
bad for that guy, but at the end, and this is coming back thinking the way I used to think at one time. Was it bad taking him out of the world? He was, and I hate to think this way. He got diddled by a diddler, and a lot of times those people start diddling themselves. So yeah, even though he made a mistake, did he make a big mistake? I know, guilty by association, collateral damage. We shouldn't be thinking that way. But years ago, I would have been on like, yeah, it is what it is. Next, you know what I mean? But a
Yeah.
fucked up movie, a good movie, Clint Eastwood movie, I believe. Yeah, that's one of my favorite underrated. When we talk about not mob movies, but gang movies, that's one of the most underrated ones. Real good movie. Check it out,
yeah,
Mystic.
there's definitely a mob subplot to that movie. It's
Of course,
the Irish mob, but
Mhm.
it's definitely there. And then
it has
the other,
everything. It has karma. It has everything in there.
yeah, the last one I'll mention just because of your audience and what we talk about here is I also assign Boys in the Hood, which is definitely has street
Yeah.
gang stuff.
Classic,
So
classic,
so those would
classic.
be just three examples that we would use.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Timothy O'Reilly. The pimps were supposed to be African American, but Scorsese was told the studio to change the ethnicity. Yeah, I mean it didn't matter anyway because you didn't have like the greatest example of black guys in that movie. And I do pick up on Travis. I do pick up on some racial thing between him after I watched it because I watched it to go
Sure.
on someone's channel because they wanted to talk about it. And then I was picking up on a couple of things. I don't know if Scorsese did that on purpose. Whether it's the weird relationship he has with the other black cab driver. Hey, Travis, you got that money you owe me? Or he shoots the guy robbing the bodega. Then you see another black guy running down the street screaming at one point, and then the pimps in Times Square. So I don't know if you noticed anything with that, regardless.
Well, there's the Scorsese cameo where he's completely
course.
he's a complete racist. and
How could I forget
misogynist.
that? Yeah, of course.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely that subtext is there.
Yeah.
in
And
the
N-word
film for
lives
sure.
there. Yeah, that's what he says. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I seen a short documentary with Scorsese where it has his mom and his dad in it. They're on a couch and they're fighting with each other, and it's pretty ridiculous. But it was kind of funny. I think he was in film school at the time. He had nothing better to do.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It was okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, don't waste your time watching it. I mean, but
Well, he's got some weird things. He's got the one with Stephen Prince that he did, right? Easy Andy.
I'm not familiar with that.
The guy who played Easy Andy, the gun dealer.
Oh yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, Stephen Prince. He's got like this little documentary. I think it's called American Prince.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Where
about.
he's
I didn't
just
know
like,
about that.
yeah, it's filmed way back, but it's just about his life and who he is. He's still around, by the way. He's still around.
Yeah.
hey, Fish, what's going on? Fish is here. Shout out to Fish.
John Sitzlitsky, this is kind of newer, maybe. Regarding Al Truccio's former crew, Mike Rock got bumped to capo. Thoughts? Well, I don't know if Frank would talk about that. Wouldn't he just walk away?
Yeah. No, I have no thoughts on him yet, but he should walk away. I don't know. Howie would be great. If you had to ask a friend because he was around those guys, he'd be probably the perfect guy to ask.
He should walk away, huh?
Yeah, Scott H, how's it going, buddy? What are you doing? David Lopez, Lexington Steel, how are you?
Frank, I heard you mention Larry Persico.
Mentions like my next door neighbor and sister's best friend dated him. He was always around her house. Yeah, Larry was. I'll get to you.
I ask you every time. That's the guy that was in the newspaper like 5 years ago. He's delivering pizzas or whatever.
Yes.
They tried to embarrass him for delivering pizza or something.
That poor guy. He got arrested for a no-show job. Now, if he's not fucking the snake's son, he don't get arrested because he had a couple issues which I'm not gonna talk about. But he got arrested, and I'm his brother's roommate, Bunky, and here comes Larry. He goes, oh fuck, Larry drives him crazy. So I go, hey, listen, man, you get with your brother. It's all right. He goes, don't you dare move. He goes, but anyway, he ends up taking his brother. I talked him into it. And Allie always was on the top bunk, and Larry was in the bottom. Larry's a little bit heavier. And it's like 3 a.m, and Allie's bed's going up and down like this. And he looks down and he goes, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, I'm doing aerobics. He goes, at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning, fucking, he just couldn't take it. He finally got bailed out, and his brother was like, thank God, but he ends up getting fucking missing a meeting, and he got him back in there. He was just driving him crazy. I have a story.
He has a question for James, Corruption Connection. He says, can James expand on any information in regards to the recent Salvatore Catalano arrest in Sicily?
No, I'm afraid I can't. I mean, I think I was surprised. I remember texting Frank in real time, and I think Frank, you had already heard about it. But I was surprised to see his name even resurface. I mean, I knew he went back to Sicily, but I was unaware of him being involved in anything. I mean, it was pretty quiet until this thing went down. So unfortunately, I don't know anything other than what the press in Italy is reporting.
At one time, maybe my cousin, who I don't speak to no more, is married to his niece. They're from Shamina, I believe. And am I surprised that somebody at 80 years old is still committing crimes? If true, I'm not saying he did. Of course. But then again, the conspiracy. Listen, the conspiracy law in Sicily is very, very easy to attract. You could be talking to somebody, and all of a sudden, boom, they put you in there. Or you could have been asking for your money, who you owed somebody money to, and then you were extorting. So there's a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. Don't throw him under the bus.
They got him on, right? Didn't they get him on extortion?
Yeah, at 80 years old. Yeah. I think he was Listen, it's hard for me to believe anybody at 80 years old is doing the Sonny Franchise thing. It's just hard for me to fathom. I don't understand it. So I don't know. There's 3 sides to his story. Unless you got. Do I think South Carolina's going fucking from store to store, asking for people for money? Nah.
Yeah, that's difficult to imagine. It might sound more nefarious than it was, but I was just as surprised as everyone else to see him research.
Yeah, you got a lot of scumbags out there too. You lend them money, then the next thing when they don't want to pay you, they say you get extorted. They do that.
True.
They do a lot of that shit. I seen it in the real world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then you become a motherfucker.
He says he's an Italian guy from the suburbs, but after watching Boys in the Hood in the theater, he wanted to go out and gangbang. You talk a lot about those gangs. I'm pretty sure you
break, motherfucker.
Do you receive some type of recognition? Please, if you can explain to us. Sorry, I forgot. In reference to your research with the gangs, the American street gangs.
Yeah. What about it? Yeah. I mean, I do some, especially around here in Detroit.
Right. So what is that like? How is that different than like if you're talking about like Sicilian organized crime? What would you say the biggest difference is? Is it as organized, less organized?
Well, I think it's definitely less organized. And it depends. Like some street gangs are really like diffuse. You don't really have like a hierarchical, paramilitary setup. You have big homies, the guys that have more stature on the streets, but they're not necessarily, they can't really like call the shots per se. Now that becomes a little bit more complicated, like with some of the institutionalized gangs in Chicago, like back in the day, like the Gangster Disciples in some ways you could think of it more of like a black mafia, you did have like sort of, somewhat of an organization in place. So it really depends on the case study, but I don't really see that in Detroit. New York, I'm not as sure. I mean, you have the Latin Kings, who are definitely, somebody to take into account. And my understanding is that the Bloods are really sort of on the rise in New York too. But in a lot of cases, these street gangs are more decentralized, and they don't really have like, you don't have like a soldier capo kind of thing, capo kind of thing. The other thing is, like with street gangs, sometimes you have dudes that like are just like work legit jobs who like used to bang when they were younger. And
Yeah.
so they might be 40 something years old and they still rep their color or still rep their set, but
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
really
Right.
out on the street, like, committing crimes or anything. They might still be hustling small time things here and there, but they're not like full-time gangsters. So I think in a lot of ways it's a lot more complicated, the street gang.
Right. And it's different
Stuff.
sats. Yeah, like you said, right now in the Bronx, the Bloods, there's a lot of these sats, a lot of these drill rappers. There's that whole scene that really took off in the Bronx. And I assume it started in Chicago, right? The whole drill rap, that whole
Yeah.
idea. So
Yeah.
now it's in the Bronx, it's in New York City, and it's essentially just as violent, innocent people getting shot, women, elderly people, children. It's kind of turning into the same thing over here in the Bronx, mostly in the Bronx. I mean, you got Brownsville, East New York, it goes on a little bit, but I think Bronx is probably where it's really popping off right now.
Yeah.
Getting
And
bad.
I think a lot of the violence is not linked to organized criminal activities. Like a lot of times what you'll see with so-called gang violence is like just some dude looks at this dude's girlfriend at a party and like
Right.
something like that can be like, what the fuck are you
Yeah.
looking? And like,
Yeah.
That shit's been around forever.
yeah. And then next thing you know, someone gets shot and you bump into a guy at a party and like, so it's not necessarily like fighting over drug territory. I mean, sometimes that can happen, but sometimes I wouldn't say that a gang related homicide is necessarily related to organized criminal activities. It depends,
What's with all the
Hey,
recording?
hey, Dr. Vinny, what's going on? David, just let me say hi to some. I don't want to miss anybody. Chris,
Right,
what's
sure.
up, guys?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I
bro.
was saying, like, is it crazy? Like, because, when you think of like, 20-something-year-old gang members of the 90s, 80s, and the 70s, and you look like the Gen Z gang members now. I mean, it's kind of wild. I mean, they're recording everything. They're flexing in front of the world, which is essentially millions to billions of people can see this. It's a completely different dynamic. Have you looked into any of that stuff? Have you thought about
Yeah, we talk about that a lot in my classes, and if shameless self promotion, one of the
No.
episodes I appeared on was where I was interviewed was an episode on Vice TV through they had this show called series called Noisy, and so this episode that I was on was about the relationship between urban violence in Detroit and local hip hop. So I actually commented on this, and people can check out that documentary. But it is unusual to me because I come from this researching this tradition of like the Sicilian mafiosi, where it's the exact opposite, right? You want to be low key. You don't want anyone to know that you're a gangster. So it's quite different than to see these guys go on social media and recording songs and on YouTube, flexing but actually like things that are incriminating. I mean, putting out incriminating information about homicides and drug dealing. And I assure you, because as part of my research, I talk to people in law enforcement as well, and or interview them, and they're monitoring it and they're taking notes.
Of course,
and
right?
if they can roll it into an indictment, that information they will. So if I know New York passed some laws to try to protect, because that gets kind of this interesting discussion about freedom of speech and should art be something that you can incriminate yourself, but whatever. In other places, if that's something that the feds can use to roll into an indictment, they will. Of course, they'll need other evidence as well. But yeah, it's unusual to me. I don't. I'm curious as a researcher why people would want to put that kind of information out there. I mean, I think I have some ideas, like in terms of like social psychology, why they would do it. But
I think it's just stupidity, but
well, I think I mean, I think part of it is also like this kind of nihilistic, like they don't view like they think that their time on Earth is short. And
I can relate to that. I can relate to that when I was a kid. I didn't think I was going to make it 35. Right. That's why I was doing a lot of the stupid shit I was doing. So I could kind of feel that. Sometimes maybe doing a couple of bullets in jail fucking coming out, building my rep. Was
Yeah.
you know, I think I got caught up of fucking wanting to be a lot like other people too. I don't know it. I mean, that's what it was. Just keeping up. It was a dick waving contest. You did this, I want to do that too. You want to be part of something, I want to be part of it also. You know, after I left high school, I got thrown out of school. That was the only life I wanted, you know, at that point. So I can see that.
I think that's good insight. Yeah, I think that explains a lot of it. But yeah, it is something I'm interested in as a researcher.
Yeah, it's weird.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and they all grow up in like the culture of oversharing anyway. If they're Gen Z, so that's all they ever, and everyone's oversharing their personal lives. You know, so I don't know if there was a version of it back in the day. I mean, we see pictures of like even like Detroit gangsters in the 70s and 80s with they'll be with guns and fur or whatever's going on. It's like, why would you even take that picture, right? Somebody might find that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess that's somewhat of a version of it back then, but you'd have to get those pictures developed. More of an investment of your time. So
no, you're right. The Chambers brothers were a prolific drug organization in the 80s in Detroit. At one point, they were making more money from selling dope than Chrysler was making selling cars. They had direct connect to Columbia. And they were making home videos back then. It wasn't social media, but to your point, it was VHS. They had the old school, and they were filming themselves counting the money and all the expense. You know, the sort of conspicuous consumption. Here's all the shit we're buying, cars and all that. And when the cops raided these drug houses, they would find these VHS tapes, and again they rolled it into the indictment.
There you go. Yeah.
So it's sort of primitive technology.
Things too. So.
Yeah, it's a good comparison. Yeah, but now the cops just have to sit in their patrol car when they're bored. Like, hey, let's see what these guys are doing in the Bronx tonight.
Yeah, they're making it easier on them now. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're getting killed on live streams now. I mean, we don't have to get into that, but I mean, it's getting
it's scary. Yeah.
What's up, Common? Just saying hi to a couple people.
What's going on, man? Oh, we have the legendary. I don't know if you guys saw this. The legendary Lexington Steel is in the chat tonight.
Lexington Steel.
Yeah, we like to welcome Lex Steele to the chat. Thank you for stopping.
Oh man, Matt, what's the score of that game? Put it down. I don't have it in front of me.
Great question.
Red zone.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Great question. I love it. Great question. I'm a huge fan. Black Sabbath is my favorite band of all time, and people that would, if they watched the original Gangsters podcast, might remember that I would always rep a different like metal or punk t-shirt on every episode, sometimes hip hop, but usually metal or punk. And I have to go with Ozzy just because he's the OG, you know, it's the original, but I love Dio era Sabbath. I love Dio era Sabbath, but you have to go with Ozzy. He's the OG.
I got a trivia question for you. Who was the first metal act to win a Grammy?
Oh, is this the Jethro Tull controversy?
Oh my God!
Is that who they gave it to?
Yeah, they beat Metallica.
You listen to, you want to throw your shoe out a window.
Ian Anderson with his
the flute. They beat Metallica out.
What year
was that? 88 or 89, something like that. They were up against Metallica, and Jethro Tull. People were like, "Is that even metal?" Jethro Tull was sort of controversial.
Broadway shit, bro.
Yeah,
that was. Remember sitting on a park bench with boogers coming down your nose?
Yeah. Aqualung.
Thank you, Dr. Boombarch. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
What's your favorite punk band, then? I got to ask. Who's your punk band?
My favorite punk band is, it's probably Misfits, but I mean, Bad Brains would be a really close, really close Minor Threat. But if I had to pick, probably Misfits.
So then tell me why Walk Among Us is the best Misfits album.
Walk Among Us.
Well, to me it is.
I'm partial to some of those like earlier recordings that were released later. The kind of like the demos and stuff like that.
Like Legacy of Brutality.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But even more recent, like in like the 90s, some of this stuff, like they were releasing like I can't. What do they call it? It was Static Age. Yeah, right. I really like those earlier recordings.
Yeah, with like Hybrid Moments is on that, and a lot of those other songs that became pretty big.
Some Kind of Hate.
Some Kind of Hate. Yeah.
Yeah, there's great In the Doorway. So there was But Walk Among Us, yeah, I mean that's
No, that's
definitely
my favorite. So I always just gotta say, Theme for a Jackal. I think that's another good one on Static Age.
yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah.
Let me just
Yeah,
ask
Yeah,
you,
they're
what's
my
my favorite
favorite.
Seattle band?
Yeah,
Danzig
Misfits,
Misfits.
and they're East Coast guys, Jersey.
Yeah, Lodi, New Jersey. Yeah.
And I believe Danzig is Sicilian. I can't remember his
Yeah. His name is
name, but
Anzalone, I think.
Anzalone, yeah.
The guy who sings Mother over there. Mother, that guy.
Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's a little
that's
later.
yeah.
That's a little later.
Jeez.
Yeah.
They asked me what's my favorite Seattle band. I'm gonna go mainstream, but I didn't like them back then. Actually, I like Nirvana better than I did Pearl Jam, but now I don't longer like Nirvana anymore because they bit off a lot of other artists in their music. So I'm going with Pearl Jam.
Why? Because were you saying Nirvana bit off? Thank you, Vinny Boombots, by the way.
Yeah, they bit a lot of stuff. I mean, just like Smells Like Teen Spirit has two different hooks on it.
More Than a Feeling. I know Brad
And
Delp
the
was
Gap
crying
Band,
about
the
that.
beginning, don't you drop the bomb on me.
I would say Alice in Chains just because they were heavier. They were more
Yeah, of course.
AAF,
Yeah,
yeah,
Chains,
Agnostic
yeah.
Front. Nice
Agnostic
shout out
Front,
to
yeah.
Agnostic Front.
And
Yeah.
if you want to go Mother Love Bone and all them, I mean, but I really wasn't into them either, you know.
Soundgarden, I think, is mine. Probably.
Soundgarden was very good too. They all come from the area I'm in right now. They're from the Kirkland, Bellevue area, which is East Seattle.
Yeah, Cro-Mags.
I know a lot of people went to school with these guys and everything. They're about my age, you know.
You know, when you talk about those hardcore New York hardcore bands, I definitely wouldn't say they were gangs, but they were tough motherfuckers. They were dudes not to be trifled with. Those, you know, the guys they connected to AF, like those Doc Martens crews, those guys. So one of the guys I'm friends with, he was on our podcast when I was part of the OG podcast, was Mooch. He was a shot caller with the Mongols Motorcycle Club, and he used to be in part of the hardcore scene. And the Mongols, you know, they had some run-ins with those New York hardcore crews, those Doc Martens crews, and those dudes didn't back down. Those New York hardcore dudes, they did not back down to the bikers. I mean, they were some serious dudes.
They were on heroin, on drugs. They all fucked up.
Yeah, well, they were all living in squats. A lot of them.
Yeah, they live in the Bowery. Four of them in the room. They're like fucking. They're like rats, not the informants, but
right. Yeah, they were not like afraid of anybody. They were
the ones who was throwing bottles. The guy that got beat up and always came up.
Yeah, right on.
Yep.
But
which started in Jackson Heights, actually. DMS graffiti crew, and then they started doing whatever they were doing after that. But a lot of graffiti. That's my thing. Graffiti history and stuff.
Yeah.
Not to go off topic, but when do you think, James, we're talking about the Sicilian Zips, when do you think they actually don't become a thing anymore? What year, what time within the Bananno family? Not the Gambino family, because obviously we could go back to there, and I really don't want, because again, I think they're active still, so I don't really want to talk about them.
Sure.
But I just never thought, even when I was a kid, that the Sicilian faction of the Bananno family was a thing. I know there was an article. They mentioned a couple of guys visited a couple other guys back in Sicily, and then a lot of these mobologists jumped all over that. But I was like, no, guys, don't get excited. It's not what you think.
Yeah, I'm looking at some articles I have from the Italian press. So this was like in 2022. There was an article from the Italian, I can't remember which newspaper, but talking about this nexus between Castellamare and the New York Mafia. So I agree with you. They were really playing it up. And I think you and I have talked about this privately, that sometimes there's confusion over the fact that there are guys in New York who may be active or connected, and they trace their heritage to Castellamare.
So they go every year.
They visit. Yeah. They go visit, and they happen to know or are related to guys who are in the life over there, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there's some kind of conspiracy, that there's some kind of organized crime conspiracy. Sometimes it's just people know each other and are related to each other, And so it it can become this kind of difficult to disentangle. But the press always builds it up, especially on the Italian side. They always build it up as this is more proof that there's this kind of transatlantic conspiracy between New York and Castellamare.
Yeah, and the two guys they mentioned, I knew them. I knew them both. One I knew I used to pal around with a lot. I knew them both very well, and they weren't built like that. I think that was just people trying to make some news. You know what I mean?
Well, part of that, what we're referring to was also when it came out. Some of the details was there was a guy from New York that was just asking a guy in Castellamare like if he could help him with some with some zoning stuff because he wanted to put in a swimming pool. So that's hard. That's hardly like some international drug trafficking or something.
And the guy who asked, he actually owned a house next to my mom's house in Italy on the water. His mother and my mother were friends since they were kids, and we later became friends when we got older. They made him, I guess. I don't know why. But he's not a bad guy. He's just not for that life, you know. He's the guy I was telling you about. Good guy, really good guy. He's the guy I told you that we ran into Slash and Mike Tyson at a strip club.
Right.
Which is pretty fucked up if he's listening because I hope his wife ain't there. And then I ran into Mike Tyson again with him. Really an excellent guy. But that's what was going on after Messina flip. A lot of the American guys were trying to bring in the Sicilian guys who had family back home, even without any kind of like background check. Now, background check was fine. The pedigree was good. The know-how, it was a little fucking rough, you know? I mean, if they didn't get arrested with everybody else or something like that, what makes you think they're the guys you're looking for, you know? One's a plumber. I don't get it. Even the kid, the Iron Man, I ran into the Iron Man, they call him, Montana. I felt that he was kind of like forced in that situation. And he metamorphosed into thinking he was something he wasn't. And unfortunately got him killed.
Yeah, I mean, I would say when the death of Cesare Bonventre in '84 was definitely one of the, started to put an end to this notion of like the Sicilians having their own faction within the Banannos, because after that, when you see some of the other heavyweights from our town, like Joe Buccellato, Vinny Asaro, those guys all kind of just went with the Messino Rastelli regime. They didn't. I mean,
they did. Yeah, Joe Buccellato was told he was a consigliere then, and I think they were like, he was older. That was their way of saying, "Hey, look, if there's still a couple of Sicilians left, let's make them think that this is where we're going." I'm not saying they were but he was far from a puppet, but they put him there on purpose to make him feel like make the other guys at ease, especially after what Joe Messino was doing. I think he was worried after Caesar got killed. That he didn't know what was going to come out of that. It's just unfortunately there wasn't too many Sicilians out on the street anymore. My neighborhood got demolished in 84, 85. A lot of the Sicilian guys within the Gambino family and Bananno family were taken off the streets. We went from being very mob. We were always mob guys. There was always mob guys, but it seemed like when Gotti came into power in 85, that we were just like orphans, like a lot of us. We didn't have the people that we had there. Like I'm talking about 30 to 40 guys that were very respected. We either died in jail, on the lam, so that's what happened. Now, yeah, of course there was those guys, but they just started kissing a lot of ass. My uncle was one of them. I'm not going to lie. And it was either fuck it, they're not around, let's make some money. So that's what happened.
Yeah, I think my understanding is like a lot of those guys, like your uncle Cheech and Joe Buccellato, that those guys worked pretty well with the Rastelli, Messino group. I mean, I think Baldo Amato was somebody that Messino never fully trusted, but
no.
he didn't promote him. He didn't
do that either. As a matter of fact, he was in jail, so he had a while to think about how he was going to handle that. And I hate to use the term fall in line, but he kind of did.
Yeah.
Barlow did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that just went with the flow. You see, when there's kind of like this kind of war going on, and I explained this before, between a family, there's like there's 10 people involved here, 10 people involved there, and everybody else watches, and they just wait until everything comes to line, and then they join again. They stay neutral, you know, and
Yeah.
and that's what was going on. But that's what demolished the Sicilians and the Bananno family. The Pizza Connection case was one of them. A lot of the guys weren't out there no more. A lot of
also the Corleonesi were killing all those guys in Sicily that had connections to New York, so that didn't help either. You know, they were killing a lot of those guys.
And don't think for a second Gotti or even Messina was not worried about those guys. When does Gotti take out Castellano if that war in Sicily ain't going on? And even when he does take him out, do you see he doesn't want American guys identifying with the Sicilian guys any longer? Because he didn't want that, you know, that conspiracy starting to take place. So he would nip that in the ass right away. And that's what happened. They killed one guy for thinking he what was he saying? He considered himself made in Italy and in New York. So the Gambino guys took him away. That was Gotti kind of like being worried.
Yeah, I think he was willing to work with them as long as he was able to get money. But we know from those transcripts, I mean, when he was wiretapped, that he was always like sort of cautious about the Sicilians. And there's a funny part in one of the transcripts. Some of your audience may be more familiar with it than I am, but where they're complaining about how the Sicilian guys don't seem to understand English when it's time to pay their tribute. When it's time to kick up, all of a sudden they don't understand English. And I always thought that was sort of amusing. So, yeah, Tota, I'm looking at the
yeah, it's common sense. That's a pretty good question.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I mean, so if Totorina, if they would have killed Gotti, I mean, I think
the American faction, they fall in line.
I think they fall. Yeah, I think they fall in line.
For sure.
Yeah, I think so.
For sure.
And I mean, remember, like, Gotti, he did have, even if he didn't trust him, he had respect for the Sicilian faction, because something that was interesting was when John Gotti had to meet with John Gambino, Gotti would go to him, which was very counterintuitive, because, you know, Gotti like to hold court and have the other people come to him, and John Gambino, he would always go to his cafe there in Brooklyn. And I think that kind of speaks volumes to the fact that Gotti had to finesse, even though the Inzerillo Gambino clan was being chased out of Sicily.
Italy. Yeah,
they still had juice.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's they ended up that. I don't want to get into that one. That's Callie's family, Frank Callie's family.
Right. I was just going to bring up, speaking of that, you know, that clan, you know, Callie, James, did you see recently what happened with Anthony Comello?
I've just heard some things. People have texted me, but I haven't read anything specifically, but I heard that I'm aware of the news coming out. And it's difficult to sort out whether, I mean, is he just pazzo? Is he just completely crazy? But which seems like it to me.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
But I haven't looked at the primary documents myself, just for clarification. But
I don't even think they're available, right, Frank? I don't think they're not showing anybody anything. Apparently, they say just he pleaded to a manslaughter. They're not telling you what his sentence is.
I didn't follow the case.
He's already been locked up.
That could be what? That could be that could be up to 25 years too.
He's been in for like 6 years, I think, something like that.
Well, he's apparently
on a manslaughter. Depends what type of manslaughter.
He's been getting death threats. My understanding is he's been getting death threats pretty consistently. And I'm also, you know, people have texted me that he in that the court documentation that he has HIV.
I
which
heard that too. Yeah.
I don't know what that means, but that's another kind of unusual layer to
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
Jeez.
to this story. And I think one of his family's properties there was some arson, if I'm not mistaken, at one point.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, whatever that family is still very, very powerful. I mean, we don't have to
Oh
name
yeah,
names,
yeah, for sure.
but especially now they've returned. They've, that's a whole thing. They're back. They're back on top in Palermo.
Yeah, that was yes. If anybody has better connections in all the 5 families with back home in Sicily, it's definitely that family right there, the Gambino family.
Yeah,
I just don't like to get into it a lot,
of course.
maybe because I know them,
Sure.
and they're still around, so I don't want to give them no problems.
Yeah, of course.
But the ones that I do talk about, I never thought they would have had anything. That's the ones that Bananno clan. I don't think they had anything to do with anything, So I could talk about them all day. Facts speak. You know what I mean?
Of course.
HIV from stripping was a heroin addict. Yeah, so HIV, heroin, and QAnon. Those don't go well together, people. Don't go down that path.
Don't make that cocktail.
Yeah, this is the public service announcement. Don't make
Don't make that cocktail. Not good.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to
maybe one of them is bad, but all three. I mean.
Yeah, bad combination. So, yeah, I mean, I my only take on it, not knowing a lot, is that I can't help but think that at some point we're going to look back at this as like the Mafia history version of like Mark David Chapman, like just a guy that becomes who's crazy, who becomes fixated on someone, but instead of a celebrity, they happen to become fixated on a a mobster, and then assassinates him. And
that's a good analogy. That's a very good analogy, actually.
Yeah,
I think that's how it's gonna play out.
Yeah,
he could have liked Jodie Foster and killed Frank Cali. That would have been fucked up.
Right, right. Like right.
Back
to Taxi Driver. Back to
Taxi
Driver.
There you go.
Right?
Nice callback.
He was a nice guy. I met Frank a long time ago, actually, and he came off as a really nice guy.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah. God rest his soul.
He was a popular guy. That's my.
He was a popular guy. You figure you don't get killed. You people like you in that life, but then you get killed by this fucking nut job. It's sad. Hey, Primo, what's up, baby? I haven't seen him in a long time.
What's up, Primo? DL, what's going on? DL, he's in rehab for QAnon.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear. Where is that? What is that? Passages, Malibu?
Matt, what score do we got? What score? The Galante hit.
All right.
Is that ever gonna come? Do you think we're ever gonna know what really happened and who was involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some pretty good information. I mean, I think there's some things that you probably have some insight into that still haven't fully come out. But in terms of who set him up, and why, I think we have a lot of good information. I mean, one thing that I heard from a DEA agent, undercover DEA agent, which I don't know if you've ever heard this, Frank, which is that he believed that Bonventre and Baldo also put slugs into him.
Right.
As they were walking out. Maybe that's never been like verified, but
I've heard that. I've heard that on the government side as well.
Yeah, that's
easy to say because of the how nonchalant that was. How convenient it was. Hot. We just got scared and we're wearing leather jackets. So, okay, they pumped shots in them as well. My thing is the Trini angle. Like, I know Joe Messina. Joe Messina was trying to put. He was an acting captain at the time. How much would he have not? Those guys did not talk about stuff. That's why a lot of
as far as Trin being there, you're saying as far as Trin being there?
Yeah, I don't think he was. I think that was brought up. I know that was brought up by Joe Messina, that Trini was there. And you go, well, he should know he's the boss. He wasn't back then. He was the acting captain. And you don't go around asking who went to a crime scene. And even when you're boss, it's not like the same thing. Him asking Vinny Gorgeous, this is something that happened 20 years after it's done. Why would that be important? You don't ask. And you're asking the Zips. I know they're in the same family, but they might as well have been a world apart, you know? So, but he does say that Moro was there. Everybody to him that was there was dead. So
Russell
Mhm.
is he
Morrow,
doing
yeah.
it because he just was doing somebody a favor because his family still lives in Howard Beach and maybe one guy might be still alive?
Well, what do you think? Trent is too fat to be there? Is that really your point?
He's 400 fucking pounds. They would have seen him. What the fuck? Running
Yeah.
out of that fucking. They said there was a guy that was a little bit husky. They called out his name, and you could assume who that guy was because they called him whatever. They called him by his first name, and he was a little chubby, but not 400 pounds chubby. You know that shit with a ski mask. You
It's
know,
pretty conspicuous. Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty conspicuous. Yeah,
yeah.
logistically, it doesn't make sense.
I mean, what the fuck? It doesn't. And is it Messino being Messino? You know, I told, but I'm gonna do these people a favor. Did he really know who was there? He had an idea. Was Endocado there? You know, the government's argument in Endocado is that they have his thumbprint in the car on the
Right.
car handle.
Right.
Okay, but they say after he's at the Revenite Club hugging fucking Della
There's a
Croce.
surveillance
He
footage
did that
of that.
every day. But he did it at that time. They're celebrating Galante's death. And why would they be celebrating it more? Like I know fucking Carlo Gambino had a hard on for him, but they were putting. You got to remember, in 1979, you didn't have the informant you have today. You had to piece a lot of stuff together. I mean, Luigi Run Val was a hitman back then. You know what I mean? Where they would have threw him out the fucking precinct today. You know. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff.
But it was like a freshly stolen car, right? I mean,
they do find I think a thumbprint on the steering wheel that belonged to, we could say it.
but I'm saying it was a stolen car, right? It wasn't like something.
It was a stolen car. Yeah.
So I mean, that would be kind of weird. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you, Matt.
So are you're challenging because the dominant like theory is that the Gambinos signed off on it because Galante was trying to monopolize the heroin supply.
And the cheese business was big too.
Yes, right.
And they were bumping heads in more ways than one. It was only drugs. It was in a domestic level as well. From gambling to the pizza business is very, very huge.
Yeah. I mean, I know you've talked about it, and even on your show too, the pizza wars or the cheese wars, however you want to refer to it. But so it seems to me plausible that the Gambinos would have wanted Galante out of the way.
Who 100%, of course. And I guarantee you, if anybody knew more than the Rastelli and Joe Messino on how this was going to go down, it was the Sicilian faction of the Gambinos.
Yeah,
they had a lot to gain by that as well, and they were a close-knit group. They were very close. Even from a perspective of Ridgewood, when I was a kid, it wasn't like they were any. Oh, you were with the Gambinos, and even my group of friends as we got older. Patsy Conti had his guys. Vito Grimaldi, my uncle, had his. We did things together. We were friends. We grew up together. We played soccer together, baseball. When we got older, we hung out together. It wasn't like, you're with this guy. Matter of fact, there was a couple of kids I remember didn't give a fuck about being around the Americans. They made it known too.
Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed.
What's up, Tom? Let me say hi. Hey, Rob G. What's up, my man? Rob in the house and some who else is that right there?
Well, I want to say thank you to Vinny
Carlo.
Boombots.
What's up, Carlos?
Thank you to Vinny Boombots. Thank you to
Vinny.
Carmine S. And thank you to Matt. Appreciate that, brother. You're the man. Thank you so much.
Somebody asked about NFL football.
Tom Levecki is here. I'm sorry, James. You were saying that you had interviewed somebody recently. You were saying?
Well, I've just in the past I've interviewed Frank Panessa, who was the undercover DEA agent, and he infiltrated the Cherry Hill Gambino crew, but he was also dealing with Baldo and Cesare, and he was saying that they were interacting with each other. They were commingling. To Frank's point, like the Bananno and Gambino zips were commingling.
Always, yeah. And as we get older, we become like the second generation of that. We got along too. My best friend growing up was around the Gambinos. You know what I mean? And then sometimes they switched over. Nah, there was no. We were very close.
Yeah.
James, Tom Lavecchia posed the question: how much of Luigi Run Val do you believe? Do you believe his story? I guess how much on board are you in general?
I mean, I believe a lot of his, like, his criminal exploits, that he was involved in criminal activity. In terms of how much insight did he have in terms of like politics, like upper echelon mafia politics, I guess that's where I'm not so sure. He may have been coached. Some of that you can't help but wonder if was he coached to put pieces together that the feds wanted to be put together. But I do believe that he was, a Sicilian criminal who was committing crimes on behalf of the mafia. I believe the basics of that. In terms of how much did he know about what was going on, I think that's where it's challenging.
My thing is with the old man, with the Pino de Iguana. That's where I draw the line. Now I knew somebody. He was just someone they were fucking with. Do I think he was a criminal? Yeah, of course. So was the Iceman. Do I believe the Iceman was on the Galante hit or other 900 other things he said he was on? Absolutely not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I call him the Sicilian Iceman. I think he had malice in him.
He did kill 5 people, I think. So.
Oh?
The Iceman, I mean, he did kill like 5 people, I think.
Yeah. No, and the same thing with this guy.
I mean, Roncesvalles, he's got the whole thing that he thought drug dealing was immoral. Like, that kind of stuff, I think, is very self-serving.
But at the same breath, he said he was moving fucking heroin from city to city.
Yeah.
I don't.
Shall I play the clip, Frank?
Sure.
I know you always want me to play the clip.
Watch, I see him in the background. You know that. This is great.
He always wants you to play. Ever since this came out, I got to play this. Here we go. Let's get the volume.
Over here at Pride. So,
did your uncle say who he was going to eat lunch with today?
No, he stopped every day for coffee.
He stopped in here every day for coffee?
He don't know nothing. Talk like this, I can talk. If you catch me later, I do everything, another half an hour, 1 hour. I think you want. Right now.
So you say Ronzavelli's in the background over there, Frank?
Yeah, I think that's him, and because they hung out together. You see the guy who says that's my uncle. That's Frank Catania. He owned a coffee shop. Frank and Luigi were known to hang out together, and they were kind of like the same kind of types, But Frank was a good guy. He was, and his son. I was friends with his son as well. His son Joe.
I wouldn't completely write Luigi off as like a fugazi or anything. Roncesvalles. I think as researchers we should look at what he said, but I'm not sure we should just take it all. I mean, some of it you have to take with a grain of salt, but that's even like when you read Joe Bonanno's autobiography. I mean, there's nobody bigger than him, but some of it you have to take with a grain of salt because some of it's self-serving. Sometimes they have an agenda. So, but I mean, I definitely think he was, he was, involved in these kinds of things.
What do you say? And Al Capone was a jovial guy. A 60-minute.
Oh yeah.
Did you know that Al Capone? He was a jovial guy.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I love in that interview when he's like, I no Carmen Galante. If he sell drugs, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Didn't you say you had a picture of my Uncle John and out in Arizona or something?
I don't know. I didn't know. I didn't see that.
I thought that's okay. All right.
Maybe it was from someone else.
Did
he? That's interesting. Did he go out to Tucson?
No. Somebody had said that to me, and I kind of found it weird.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. That's interesting. If
Yeah, they weren't on the same level as friends anyway.
yeah.
He took a shot at his son, you know, a couple of times.
I know someone who said the Iceman wasn't as cold as he claims. He ate each. I know you're talking about Tony Pizza over here.
You know Tony Pizza?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know the character. Yeah.
Yeah. He said Richie
No
tried to poison me. He gave me a cheeseburger, and then all of a sudden I was in the hospital.
Is
Apparently
Tony
that's true.
Pizza the guy that was? Oh, you always say I got the text messages to prove it. Who was that guy you would make fun of? Was that Tony Pizza who would always say that?
What'd he say?
Always saying like I've got the text messages to prove it. That was like his big line.
Oh no! I mean, there's so many Fugazi. We're gonna do that eventually. The Fugazi Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of guys. There's another guy named Giacomo Amato, Bananno guy.
Oh, you saw him before?
You seen him? He's great. He's like
He's on
Facebook. Go ahead, you do him good.
He's on Facebook. I guess he wrote a book called "Making My Bones with the Mob," and he says he was in Glendale. And what did you say, Frank? He had a chance to.
He said, "My father said I'm becoming the mafia, but I liked him. I'm becoming with the mafia." He said he knew what he said about Salvatore. I knew he was.
I knew Salvatore before he was a rat. He was already a rat. I knew this guy already.
Ridiculous stuff, bro.
I met Joe Massino on the lunch business or whatever. There's a couple of guys on Facebook that they exist in the mob
really
group
good.
on Facebook, and then they develop this persona and they start writing books and I don't know. Listen, I don't know if their stories are true. They don't seem to be true.
What do you mean you don't know that? Troy,
I don't know. I don't
Danny
like
Trio was the best. Remember Danny Trio, James?
Yeah, I remember that guy. Yeah.
He was
he was the best. He was the best. He used to steal underwears in Florida. We found out he did for real.
I heard that.
He had a burglary rap for stealing underwears or something like that.
Yep. But no, he would rob houses and he would take a shower in the house and he would change his clothes with the people's clothes. So they called him the wash and wear burglar. That's the nickname the cops gave him.
I mean, and that's another one of the reasons, just to be honest. I mean, you know, that I wanted to step away from the podcasting world. It's just some of it was just crazy. Like, you know, the different creators beefing with each other, and then some of these Fugazi guys, and then the trolls, and I just, you know, after a while, it became exhausting. So, just speaking for myself.
I seen that, Roro. Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I seen that. Ridgewood is one of the top neighborhoods in New York City. Yeah, I believe it. I mean,
yeah, very hip, very hip.
It's a hip place. Shout out to Ridgewood. Shout out to Ridgewood.
Not sure you were talking about earlier, but David Ruggiero claimed to be a made man and was a chef and a made man. Yeah, Tom, I did a video on this guy on my channel after I think it was Vanity Fair that came out with that article about him being involved. I don't know if he said he was involved in a hit on Patty Mack when he was like 11 years old. They left in a trunk in Canarsie, Genovese guy. And he just started making up all this stuff. And he was an actual chef for some like well-known restaurants. And then he had a TV show and then whatever, fall from grace. But then he came out of nowhere years later. You know, I was a made man. I got made in Sicily. And then they brought me back. And I was involved in my first murder at 11 years old.
Jesus Christ.
Look him up, David Ruggiero. I think it was a Vanity Fair article.
Oh, Vanity Fair fell for it? Wow.
You'd be surprised how many people fall for what. I mean, like the other guy, what's his name? Lindbergh, the Swedish guy up in Detroit, Gunner.
Oh God. That's a whole other thing.
Not to take away from your guy, he just boils my blood, this fucking Lindbergh.
Yeah, you can't see it, but yeah, Vanity Fair. Yeah.
Wow.
but he had him for 5 years though. He was blowing smoke up his ass. He fell for it.
Yeah, Lindblom. He also, I mean, DJ Vlad, Fox News. I mean, he had a hustle going for a few years there.
Yeah, he fucking kind of funny though. I like the English guy that comes up to him. I don't know if he's English. The guy with the English voice.
Oh, he does the makes fun of him. Yeah.
That guy's funny as shit. There's a lot of them. There's a lot. Ramondi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was another one.
Corruption Connects has a question. I came across an FBI file that stated that Phil Lucky Giacomo was Galante's right-hand man. Do you know anything about their relationship?
No, I don't. I know he's originally from my neighborhood, but I didn't know much about him at all. Um, Guys who died in something, if they were my father's friends from back home or something, I didn't know them, or even like relatives. Especially if they died around that time in '79. Leonardo Coppola is one that I knew very well, and then the Torontos I knew the family, but I didn't know Joe Toronto, the one who died there. I knew the son, JT. We called him JT, John Toronto, the one who got shot, and the cousins. There's like 3 JTs in the family, 4. They're named after their grandfathers.
Mo
Yeah, I
says
mean,
Anthony Raimondi killed Sally Burns. No, it wasn't Sally Burns. It was Sally Burns' third cousin who also happened to be named Sally Burns. Get it right, Mo.
Probably hemorrhoids.
Get it right.
Galante's FBI files are digitized, and you can find them on the FBI's website. And
Yeah.
but I've never heard that. I mean, that'd be a question for our friends, the mob archaeologists. Shout out to them. They haven't put out content lately, but the guys that Frank and I know, Angelo and Rick and Eric and Tony, those guys know fucking everything. They'd be the ones to ask about Jacone and Galante had any kind of connection. Well,
Yeah, no, I wouldn't know. I mean,
yeah, I've never heard that.
especially the American side.
Thank you, Big Lou. Shout out, Big Lou. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that.
Hey, Big Lou, what's up, my man? What are you doing?
Appreciate you enjoying the channel.
Good guys, right? Carlos, Lou's, really good guys.
Yeah, a lot of these guys have been around, since the beginning of this whole mob tube, whatever, all the trolls, all everything that James was just talking about, all these lunatics that are still around in different forms. That's what you can do. You reinvent yourself, come back with a new face.
You came on the Gunsmoke show with us one time.
That was fun.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I get like my little rocks off. I go up there, and it's always a funny moment. Shout out to the Gunsmoke show. You'll find common sense there, even Howie at times. It's fun. It's fun.
I'm looking at and hey Tom, I hope things are well. I know Tom, he's a good dude. I do share. I'm really proud of some of the interviews that we recorded. So for example, like with George Christie, who was a major figure in the Hells Angels, and I'm really proud of that interview. I assigned that to my students for the Outlaw Bikers lesson plan. For the Italian Mafia lesson plan, I assigned our interview with Michael Friend, Michael Friend Sese. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones I assigned. I have a lesson plan on women in the underworld, and so a journalist that is a narco reporter in Mexico, I assigned that. So some of the bigger interviews that we did, I assigned those podcasts in my gangs and organized crime class.
Did you interview George Young too? Was that you?
That was
cool.
in studio. Yeah, that was.
Oh wow,
that's cool. Yeah,
that was really fun. Yeah. Rest in peace. Yeah, he was. That was pretty far out to meet him and interview him. So that's something I include into our lesson plan on the cartels. So
I was in calls later.
Historical. That's great, man. That's really great.
Yeah.
And Frank, you ran into
calls later when I was in jail.
When you were locked up, right?
Yeah, well, that guy was weird.
I think he's out now too, isn't he?
Yeah, he's out. He's out. He's a little weird, if you know what I mean. It's okay, but sugar in his tank, they say.
Are you talking about his sexuality?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow. Really? And he's like a Nazi too, isn't he? Like, how does he?
He got caught with a whole bunch of young guys when they raided his house, like 20, 30 guys. He has a daughter, by the way, but 20, 30 guys in one of these houses all coked up or somewhere. He had a big John Lennon fucking statue outside.
Yeah, he's an unusual cat, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Young little Puerto Rican guys come in. Hey, how are you?
Oh my God!
Oh,
wow. I didn't know that.
Would you say, James, he was like a Nazi type dude?
Yeah. I mean, he was like a Nazi sympathizer. I know that.
Thank you, Primo. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a Nazi sympathizer. Yep. Nazi history, but cokehead. Then in the same breath, he'll be like listening to John Lennon's Imagine.
Yeah, he viewed himself as kind of a somewhat of a revolutionary, even though it's like, yeah, but you're a Nazi, like drug lord, like how. But he kind of fancied himself as like a man of the people. So
Weird.
I don't think he was very consistent with his
Drug cocaine is a terrible drug.
Yeah,
Right,
cocaine's a hell of a drug.
It's a hell of a drug, man.
right.
1 million anniversary.
Thank
Thank you. Much appreciated. If you have any questions, put them out there. 1 million.
Well, Common Sense said Rob Iavani. Yes, big head. That's exactly what that is.
Here's a New York City legend, RD357. What's up, my man? Great Black Sabbath t-shirt on your guest. Thank you, RD.
Thank you.
All
That
right.
was an amazing interview, James. Tom Lavecchia says.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, Frank's a great source.
Who is he? The one who had Ronjavelli?
Frank, yeah, he was one of the DEA guys, and he was also the
I would
DEA.
like to interview him.
Yeah, Frank Panassa also was the DEA handler for Tommaso Buccellato too. So he's an interesting guy to talk to.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not.
We're gonna start getting interviews. We're gonna
as far
start
as
trying to
Luigi
get
Run
more
Val, I
interviews.
got some questions. That's all.
More
But
interviews, hopefully. Frank's gonna be going on another show soon. We're gonna get Frank out there doing more interviews.
Yeah,
So
I
guys-
see Tom. Yeah, Nove Toko. Yeah, Scott on the OG podcast. Which again, I'm not on that anymore. But yeah, he just interviewed Nove Toko, who was that was a pretty big score. Yeah, Nove Toko was part of the Toko's really family in Detroit, and he became a cooperator. So, but he usually doesn't do media. So that was that's it's a pretty good episode.
So that's the real Gunner. That's like the real.
Yeah. Well, and actually, we'll see. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but actually, Lindblom's mom was a Togo, and so he is related to some of them. Right. And actually, Nove is one of the people. So he has real insight into the validity or lack of validity. And so I believe he's going to comment on that, but I don't know. You have to tune into the OG podcast.
Okay.
Again, I don't know for sure, but
looking forward to that.
I mean, I know a lot. I mean, I went to school with Al. I know Lindblom. I mean, I know a lot.
Yeah, they know each other.
I don't talk about it because I just don't want to get involved. But I mean, I know him. I know. Yeah. There's
he a goofy bastard.
Yeah, I mean,
was he the guy you paid all that money to drink 6 beers all at once and stuff like that until he was on the,
Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with them, and so that's why I don't say anything publicly.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get into it, but I know what he was like back then, and I think people know what's what now. Anyhow.
Right. Tom says, "How did Vito Genovese get close to Mussolini?" Yeah, what was that? Was he like running guns for him in Italy or something when he was like hiding or something? Or
yeah, I mean, he was. I think he was giving money. I mean, I'm not an expert on it. Like I know you guys, your episode with Tom, you were talking about John Dickey, and he's the the godfather of this kind of literature. I mean, Dickey, I think has more insight into that case study, but I believe Genovese was giving money to the the regime. I believe that's how he was able to get close to some people in the fascist regime. I believe it was through money.
Sure. I think he was. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. 33G Fed 1999. Thank you, my man. Appreciate that. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
I think Mussolini was fascinated with the pull he had in America. Genovese did, and he figured that could be helpful one day. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, well. I mean, they killed the anti-fascist journalist Tresca. Galante was involved in that, and I think Frank Garofalo too was.
Garofalo, and it caused
which, by the way, back to this like self-serving, you have to take with a grain of salt. With Joe Bonanno's autobiography, Joe Bananno will have you believe he was the most anti-fascist guy ever in the history of the world. When we know that some of his top guys were involved in the murder of an anti-fascist journalist.
Well, you see in his book, he wanted to put a stop to that. He thought it was uncalled for. I think Garofalo, as we say in Castellabata, Arofalo. We don't pronounce the G's on that name, but him and I think one of the Tartamellas wanted him dead, and the other one didn't want him dead. They thought it was bad business. They did it anyway. Who knows the fucking truth? When Castellamedis are involved, who knows what's going on?
Yeah.
Big Lou, was Patty Mac related to Andrew Di Donato? You know, I'm not sure. Did Andrew Di Donato say that, Big Lou? I really don't know.
Patty Matt, who's that?
He was a Genovese guy.
Oh, okay.
He got killed in like 70s.
I know who Andrew is. I don't know him personally, but I've heard of him.
Yeah. I don't know if they're related,
Yeah,
Lou.
14-7 score right there. OSU over. Okay, so Ohio State's winning 14-7. If anybody's interested, how many people we got in chat?
105.
Oh, we got a good chat going. Cool stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Tom Levecchia says, James, if you're done, let's do a show. NBA and the Button Professor.
Go for it. You got a good guest. It'll be a great show for sure.
Yeah, well, thank
Tom's
you. Yeah,
a good guy. Tom is a good guy.
Yeah, I like Tom. Yeah, I've been on his show before.
Live by.
Oh my, he did live by there, I believe.
Oh, did yeah. I think a few guys lived there. I think Valenti lived there. Asaro's
cousin.
Then he said that. Well, he claimed that was like they went to the hole to his house. I think by the hole, that's where they stashed a bunch of jewelry or whatever the hell it is. That's what he said. But
good stuff. Yep. Was Gaetano Baldamente a power in the heroin business for decades? No, and James could help me out with that one too. He wasn't. They said if was Gaetano Baldamente. He was in construction, livestock, agriculture. He became a drug dealer late in life. He became a drug dealer when he had to on the land, believe it or not. And
Badalamenti was in Detroit for a while. He was deported from Detroit.
Yes, he was.
Because his brother was a made member of the Detroit Mafia, Manny Badalamenti, and his cousin Cesare Badalamenti was like a zip in the Detroit. So there were a lot of ties between Genesee and Detroit. But Badalamenti was also a big, I think, cigarette smuggler, like
everything. He was into everything. Drugs came later on when it was a necessity. He wanted to bust Rihanna's balls, and he was doing that out of Spain. He had the connection for Venezuela. He was in Venezuela for a second, went to Spain, and then eventually got nabbed in Spain. But
produce too. The Badalamentis were big in like produce, like had like a kind of a monopoly on produce.
He built that airport, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You know, his wife and my mom were childhood friends. They were close. She's a Castellamedis. Her last name was Vitali. I don't know if she's still alive, but if she is, she's got to be old.
All the sisters married. Their father, Vito Vitali, was a Castellamedese mafioso.
Yeah. She used to come to the house when he was in Farrington and go visit him. You know, she come visit my mom and everything like that. But they were close. My mom and his wife.
Yeah. Badalamenti is still a common name in Detroit. A lot of Italian families from Genesee in Detroit.
They also were in Illinois for a second. Who was that?
The Midwest.
Alfano. The Alfanos were there.
That's right. His nephew. Yeah.
His nephew.
Yeah, and another one of his niece was in Michigan because again his brother Manny Badalamenti was a made guy in Detroit, and so his daughter, her husband was caught up in that Pizza Connection. Avola, his last name. They were caught up in the Pizza Connection thing too. So there's a lot of ties between Detroit and the Pizza Connection that some people don't realize.
Yeah, and Jersey too.
Ask you about somebody from Detroit, James, that I have a lot of interest in. Suresho Nalo, Sammy the Arab. You got anything on him?
I know who you're talking about. Scott Bernstein would be the better guy to ask. I know who you're talking about. I don't know. I know Frank isn't going to. I don't
You don't know. He's gonna say he knows them, and then yeah, I know the name. I heard about him a couple of years ago, and what happened was he was a man behind the man behind the man.
Well, Scott actually says something that a lot of other people say about it, which I don't know because I've never seen any evidence to suggest that. This is like this idea that like the Lucchese family has something to do with the Pierre heist. I don't know. I've yet to see any evidence for it, but a lot of people repeat it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the only I've heard that name before, but I don't know. I can't really speak to it. I don't know.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely Detroit Chaldeans. You have a lot of Chaldeans. Chaldene. I'm told I
Chaldean.
pronounced it wrong. I don't know if it's pronounced
Yeah, it's Chaldean.
Chaldean. So it's not CH, right? Chaldeans.
Yeah, they're around. Yeah, they're pretty. They used to work with the Italians a lot, but now, there's not much of the Italian mafia left, so they kind of do their own thing. But yeah, they're pretty formidable. I mean, that was a thing where that was a topic that I just would not allow us to discuss on the podcast because I didn't want any problems with those dudes.
Sure.
So yeah, they're around.
Cool.
There's just some people that don't play that game, like the Aryan Brotherhood, the jail guys. They pay people outside to go after people on the out, and they don't play fair pool. Kill the guy you have to go after, but then they go after families and shit like that. People don't want that smoke.
Yeah, but yeah, I know a little bit about them, just from being
bots. Thank you, buddy. I don't
here.
think any of them are around. I don't know. I'm looking, but thank you.
What else we got? Okay.
Chaldeans, no joke, very wealthy
Yeah.
and powerful. Yeah.
Any questions, guys? We got the professional here on board. Bring it.
Yeah. Any more questions? I got about 10 minutes. Then I think we got to close it down at 9. But
I will say that Chaldeans they have a significant population in San Diego too, which is and they're related. They're related to the ones in Detroit. And the reason why that's significant is if you're in San Diego, that means you're talking drug cartels. So you're talking Tijuana, and so a lot of there was a drug pipeline from San Diego to Detroit that the Chaldeans were involved. They were like pretty wealthy, pretty powerful.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. Any books? Anything coming up?
No, I'm working on something. Frank and I have talked about collaborating on a book, and that's still something that we might consider. Right now, I'd like to do a scholarly article about the Buccellato Bonventre Magadino blood feud, and I wrote about it in my book, but I did sort of just a straight history. I'd like to give more of to revisit some of that, but give more of like an anthropological analysis about like the importance of kinship and blood symbolism and things like that. Make it more kind of an academic approach. So that's probably what I'm going to work on next.
Yeah, no, that's good. That'd be a really great topic and a first one not covered. For real, yes, Dr. Vinny asked if Joe can cook. Yes, Joe was a good cook. Joe Messina was. But back to what you're saying. Yeah, I'm all about it.
Yeah,
I would love to read that book one day.
Thank you. Yeah, San Diego's great, beautiful, especially this time of year. I'd rather be there than in New York or Detroit.
Well, yeah, there you got Tom Levesque. Hey.
Yeah,
you guys gotta get something together. That'd be a great show for real. What does he got here?
I agree with Tom. Yeah,
it was heroin and 19 in Palermo with Bananno. Yeah.
And here's something that a lot of people don't know, and Frank, you'll find this interesting. I think maybe I've talked to you about this before, but everyone knows that Bananno was in Palermo and he met with Luciano and Badalamenti and those guys. But there was Antonino Magadino was there, Vito Vitali. There's these other Castellamarese guys there.
Mm-hmm.
They also had another summit in Castellammare with like Cola Buccellato and Diego Playa and some of the guys that weren't at the Palermo summit. They had kind of some of the minores. So like it was more of like a summit in Castellammare, but just for the Alcamo Trapani Castellamarese guys.
Mantenamento.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that and Joe Bananno was there, and
Wow.
Frank Garofalo was there, Giovanni Bonventre was there, and so a lot of people don't know that, and that was after the Palermo meeting.
Wow. Well, that is interesting. And for me, anyways, because a lot of familiar names. Obviously, I didn't know, but names that still are around, still friends with family. I'm not no longer in the mix. Some things like that. Sometimes I wish I was not in a bad sense, but just to reminisce with those guys about stuff like that. I have you now, and that's good. But it is what it is.
So the question there, are they talking about Jackie Giacalone? Is he
Giacalone all the way down now with the street stuff? He's got big.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I would say that it's not gone. I mean, some people say the Detroit Mafia is gone. It's not gone. They're still made guys around. My sense is though that it's becoming more of it's on the decline. The guys aren't getting any younger, and I'm starting to get a sense that it's more of a network than a hierarchical organization. There's still guys around. I don't want to name names, but I just don't think it's what it was in the 90s, 80s, 70s, before that. I think it's some Italian guys who are made, who know each other and are loosely connected by this tradition. But I do not think it is like what you see in New York. I don't think it's like that anymore. Just because I don't think there's enough guys left. I just don't think, it's going the way of like the families you saw in Tampa, New Orleans, St. Louis, Cleveland. Like it's heading more in that direction. There's still some dudes around here, believe me, that I would rather not trifle with. Make no mistake. But I just don't think it's what it was even 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Cindy Birch says, one of our great subscribers, Cindy says she has a personal question. How do I stop someone from messing with my car? The police, a private investigator, or a baseball bat, I guess.
Yeah. Have a camera somewhere. Everything now is under surveillance. Have a camera and you can document it.
Just don't get hurt stopping anybody.
Yeah. We don't suggest you intervening on your own. Call some I don't know. Like I said, maybe you can get a private investigator to watch your car.
It's like Family Feud. Buy a shitty car, Matt says. Number one answer.
Buy a shitty car.
Yeah. Then no one's gonna care.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Good answer. Good answer. Oh man. What else we got?
Get a couple of more questions. He was talking about Jackie Giacalone. He said.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is he's still the boss, but it's a question of the boss of what,
Yeah,
Wow.
the great Roro says, get a camera. Yeah, get a camera. Get one of those cameras.
Yeah.
It's
Surveillance
been happening
camera,
for a while now.
Shitty car.
I should have thought about a camera. Yeah. Hopefully it stops, Cindy. Hopefully that stops. And when you finally catch someone on camera, you make a YouTube channel about it.
Tom's got a good question.
So we could all see. As a professor, what are the top 2 or 3 reasons for the decline of Cosa Nostra, and was it inevitable?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about, well, I guess you could do Sicily and the United States, but I think one of the biggest reasons is, I mean, I know Tom has the kind of theory that not getting into narcotics is heavily like that, the sort of like an economic reason, but I would say a lot of it was just the state prosecution. Like, so if we look at like Sicily, I think the killing Falcone, I think that went too far, and the some of the other really popular prosecutors. I mean, we even talk about Mattarella, but that was 1980. That was earlier. Falcone was, that was later. But I think that they started to lose public support. I think, traditionally the idea was the average person in Sicily was you look the other way, you might
crime on crime. Yeah.
And I think after those big assassinations and people, bombings, like terrorist attacks, when Totorino was arrested, they carried out these, bombings of museums and things. And I just think the state could no longer look the other way, and they just hit them so heavy. And the Calabrians were happy to fill that kind of political space of having more power economically and so forth. So I think Totorina's bloodlust, it made it inevitable that the state would have to finally crack down on them. In terms of the United States, I think a lot of it's similar in the sense of just the state hammering away at them. So many prosecutions, and then guys starting to cooperate.
Yeah, but they never learned their lesson. It's the first Sicilian War in Italy in the actual first one. That was the second one that was the most violent one. But the first one, they blew up a police station. You know that 8 people died with a car bomb, and they didn't learn back then. And they came down on them all. They brought martial law. The military came down, and Leggio went to jail for that, and he was in jail since that. They caught him in absentia. They caught him, and he was in jail for the longest. The Corleone's, the actual Corleone's first boss.
Before right,
right. So they were like, you know what? If we're gonna get, I think what happened was they knew they were gonna do life anyway, so they started doubling up and doing stupid shit because they knew they were out there anyway. Would they kill Falcone if they didn't do nothing wrong at the time? There was something else they were wanted for, so they doubled up. You understand? Figuring maybe if we scared them, they won't come after us no more.
Yeah, and I just think it backfired on them.
It totally backfired. Dr. Vinny had a good question.
Another one from Vinny. Thank you so much, Vinny. You're very kind. Thank you, man.
If you had immunity, would you tell more about yourself and experience? I did get. Well, I didn't get immunity. I did. I pretty much think I told them everything I ever been involved with, and did. If I have immunity on some people, it's just that at one point they just used me for the gambling and structure stuff. But pretty much they have it all. So will I talk about it? Eventually I will. Yes, of course. That was one of my when a family member just died of mine not too long ago. I think I didn't. That's what held me back from. And we weren't talking. It's just that I didn't want him to get any grief, and so. I'm pretty much an open book now. I'll talk about almost anything.
Let's get 2 more questions if you guys don't mind. There's Tom, another one. I don't know if you want to answer that, James.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult to document right now because they're so shadowy. But I mean we have some evidence. I mean some of those guys were indicted with Cosa Nostra guys in New York not that long ago, and I think that that's certainly some evidence that they're on. And you hear rumors that they have guys in New York, and that they're connected to one of the 5 families. The Gambinos usually is what you hear. But I don't know about where else they're at. I haven't heard of any other information outside of New York. I mean, obviously they have a big footprint in Canada. And the Sicilians are fighting for their lives up in Montreal, fighting the bikers, and so forth. So, but in the United States, outside of New York, I'm not sure. And, we'll see. I still have a sense that my understanding is that when the guys are active in New York, they still have to, I don't know if get permission is the right way. I mean, Frank has more insight into the streets, but like,
not anymore.
I think they have to make sure that it's cool with the 5 families when they're doing.
Well, they got to do now probably more than ever. But in the 90s, they were pretty much doing whatever they wanted to do. Even Joe Messino's first hit, if you read the transcripts on that. His first hit when they all got together, they killed a certain guy. Zumo, his name was, I believe.
Tommy Zumo or something like that.
Yeah, they did it without permission and stuff. And he even said that happened a lot. He goes, yeah, we weren't made. He goes, and this guy was a pain in our side. And if we didn't do it, he'd end up killing one of us. And they end up killing him. But that's just the way of the mob. Permission, it depends who you are, and who you around. But today I could see it being one enough because you bring a body to today's kind of climate, mob climate, or what's going on with the heat and everything like that, and the way things are. You might find yourself at the end of a fucking gun for sure. You know, if you kill somebody and then you bring all that heat, it might be like killing a law enforcement if you don't got permission.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see. I'd be interested to find out more about like immigration patterns. I mean, I don't mean to like racially profile, but if like in Detroit, there are hardly any Calabres. Like almost every. I mean, Detroit has of all. I mean, I know the East Coast has higher Italian populations than Detroit, but in terms of Detroit's Italian American population, they're almost all Siciliano. We have hardly any, Napolitan or Calabrese.
Yeah, even in New York, I shit.
So I don't know about New York, like because in Canada you have these colonies where there are a lot of Calabres, and so then you have, Andrangheta there.
Yeah.
But so New York, I'd be interested to hear about like in the, Italian enclaves, like what's going on.
Well, the ones I knew in New York, they were hard workers. They were in the construction business, and they all started coming. There was a lot of them that started coming all at once around the 90s, but they were all from the same town. There was like 200 of them came from the same town, and they knew each other around the area. 90s.
Yeah, well, in my area, I mean, according to Tom, I mean, I kind of
but
a lot of guys. I mean, that I know in this area, but not know personally, but I know, see them, whatever. But then Tom was adding some context that there's a lot of Sicilian activity, things going on. This happens to be an area of Queens called Whitestone. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but according to Tom Lavecchia, yeah, it's a hotbed for Sicilians, at least in Queens in this area. And that's why I also never talked about current people either.
and the Calabrians too. He thinks that the Andrangheta is there too.
Oh, I don't. Is that what he said last time? I don't know.
That's what his question is in the.
Oh, okay.
That I'm looking at on your screen here is like how big is their footprint. So that's why I kept on talking about the Calabrians.
So that's what he says. Whitestone, Partenico, Borghetto, and surrounding areas.
Oh, Whitestone, he says that's what people are.
That's what I was talking about, yeah.
I got you.
And surrounding.
Those guys are from Partenico and okay.
And Buccellato.
Yeah.
Oh, he says for the Sicilians. Okay.
Yeah. Partenico, that was another that used to be important to Detroit. Not so much anymore, but a lot of the big guys from Detroit back in the day, Jimmy Quadrano, Papa John Prizziola, those guys were all from Partenico.
Wasn't Frankie Five Angels from Partenico?
Traditi, the Three Fingers Coppola, he was from Partenico. Yeah.
No, remember the Godfather, Frankie Five Angels.
Frank
Ask where you're from, Partenico.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thanks for the compliment.
Thank you.
My mom had an uncle who was a priest, and Father Gregorio, I think his name. I think his name was Padre Novado, whatever. He was a priest in Partenico. When he died, he left all his nephews and nieces and property, but there was like 100 of them. They didn't know what they got like a fucking a patch of sand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not far from Castellamare. If you ever go to Sicily, these towns are pretty close to Castellamare.
All right, last question from Lavecchia. Was Louis was the priest made the Gigante brother?
I don't know. I that's one I'd rather not comment on.
He was made in the image of God. That's,
yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen, thank you for everybody for hanging out. Thanks to our moderator, the great Roro. Thank you to Dr. James.
Thank you, guys. Thank you to everybody.
You coming on. Thank you to everybody who donated tonight. We really appreciate it. Timothy O'Reilly, Pitch Tattoos, Vinny Boombots ×4, Carmine S, Matt, What It Do It Lou, 1 million anniversaries, Primo, John 33G Fed. Thank you guys. We really appreciate you. Check out Wednesday for, I believe, episode 10, Frank, of our official episodes. The year
1984.
The year 1984. Bernard Getz, the Palm Sunday Massacre. Von Ventry. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that occurred in New York City in the year 1984. If you haven't seen our other years, check out 1977, 1982, 1986. You guys might like listening or watching those. Everybody have a good night. Hang out for a second, James. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you all on Wednesday.